Martin Werner is the Goldsmith University of London. And then we have Thomas Irvine from the University of Southampton. How do you say? Southampton. Okay. And then finally, we have Frédéric Maurin from the Orchestra Nationale de Jazz de France. Okay, so welcome. Please.
Thank you very much. Wonderful to be in Barcelona. Some of you will know I spend much time here, and it's my second favourite city after London. I'm sorry, it's nearly my first, but I still love London. But it's wonderful to be here and to be part of such a fantastic festival celebrating music and the future of jazz. And it's wonderful to be here with two great people. Tom, I've known for several years at Southampton. Frederick, I'll come back to you in a second. So here is the deal. The person who asks the best question gets a copy of Song Bouncy, which I will play several times. Okay, so my name is Martin Werner. I'm a composer. I'm a jazz musician. In fact, play the video if you would mind. Okay, maybe just play the video, but quietly in the background. So I can prove to you that I've been a musician professional musician since I went to university, since 18, and I'm 57. So 40 years. 40 years I've been a professional musician. So I have a sense about, like many of you, the experience of playing, the experience of improvising, that lived moment-to-moment awareness of playing music. So the first thing I want to say to you is that, so this is one of the songs that you will hear. For your question, and then turn it down, it's okay, you don't need to listen to just a little bit in the background music. Okay. So what we're going to do is this. I will just say something about my experience as a musician and as a researcher in AI at Goldsmiths. And then I'm going to ask Frederick, maybe 6 minutes as well, Frederick to do the same thing. Who is he? What's his background? What does he care about? And then I'm going to ask Tom to do exactly the same thing. What's his background? Maybe some recent performances. And then we come back one more time around the panel. 3 questions. What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? And what are the threats for artificial intelligence? And then, please, the most exciting thing is we have a conversation. We know how much news this is getting in the press. It's become very manifest in people's minds, this idea of artificial intelligence, utopian and dystopian views. And there's a fantastic article in The Guardian today, and I would go and read it. And both Tom and I read it and said, we will buy the book. So, I've been a composer and a musician, as you can see up here, and I think that has really helped inform my research in artificial intelligence. I come from a university, Goldsmiths. It has many extraordinary alumni who have been at the cutting edge of art creative practice in London. People like Mary Quant, people like Steve McLaren, who directed 12 Years a Slave, people like Vivienne Westwood, who died recently, and people like Damien Hirst and Anthony Gormley, fantastic artists that have come, and Goldsmiths is front about being radical. So there are some questions about how do we use AI to be radical. That's a really good question. And Tom and I almost spoke about this earlier. So I have a lot of research, I have a lot of performances. I want to show you one more thing. So if you can just play, there's something called, it's just an MP3 of mine. I forgot what it's called. Yeah. So this, okay, Speak Radio, BBC Radio. Okay. Again, keep it quite quiet. Here is one thing I'm proud of. So I have some reservations about AI. I'm interested in it, as I will tell you about later, for learning, for creative agency. And this performance is something I'm very proud of. It was on BBC Radio 3 about 7 or 8 years ago, broadcast in the Wellcome Trust. And maybe we can just turn it up when we get to the music. There's the introduction. And why am I proud of it? I'm proud of it because we have been developing it for a long time. I will play with it later. I like maybe go a little. Okay. Let's listen to this. The BBC producer said the first time AI improvises with human. 2015, maybe 8 years ago, 7 years ago. Tom, how much time have I got? About 4 minutes. Give me 2 more minutes. get the idea. Now, if you could stop that and just play Back to the Future. This is the same system I will play later. 7 years later, just again, listen. A concert in Barcelona. A concert in Barcelona where they are using our software. We didn't ask. We had some contacts. He liked our software and he chose to use it. And it's quite interesting. The concert was a sellout. I think people were engaged. I think there's some great musical moments. Okay, that's enough. So, when I come back to speak later, I want you to know that I'm a musician, but I'm also someone who works as an AI researcher. But I think about the humanity of playing music. I think about how we can use AI to explore human creativity, not to replace it. So I'm going to hand over now to our second speaker, to Frederick.
Thank you, Mark. It's exactly the same statement I want to make. That for us, it's really a tool, and we are, as we're working with all these technologies, the goal is really to be able to realize some musical ideas at a different level. And of course, we're not seeking any kind of human replacement, because if you need to improvise with human, you can do it with human. So my name is Frédéric Morin. I'm currently artistic director of the French National Jazz Orchestra. I'm a composer, and of course I'm also a guitar player. I'm a conductor. I'm conducting the orchestra. We're doing several different stuff with the orchestra. Mostly it's new music, but we have got this special program that we started. It's a program in collaboration with IRCAM in Paris. Maybe some of you are familiar. It's a research center for electronic and music in Paris that was created by Pierre Boulez in the late 70s. And on this program, I'm co-writing the music with a great jazz saxophonist and composer from New York City, which is called Steve Lehman. Maybe you're familiar with Steve. And one of the goals of this program was to expand the orchestra with some technologies, because with Steve we've been working on something that is called spectral music. I don't know if you're familiar with this brand of this current of contemporary music, which the biggest names in that current were Gérard Griset, who died in the 90s, and Tristan Murail, which is still alive. And it's a music that implies different, radically different approach on the harmonic level and the melodic level, because it doesn't use, the same kind of thing that we're using in normal jazz, let's say. And so let's listen to the first video so you get an idea of what we're doing on this program. Okay, that's just to give you an idea of the music. So we're using all these technologies in different levels, at different levels. We're using it on the compositional process, and I can maybe further on, if you have some questions, explain you how we work on it. And we'll also use it on the improvisation side. For example, the last piece you've just been hearing, Steve is doing a solo, and the computer listens to what he's playing, and he's playing with him, and he adds a layer of rhythmic textures that you could hear, like, you know, that is made from a library of sound that was mostly percussion sounds. So the way we develop this technology, I mean, we're using stuff that is called Agent. It's a technology that runs on Max. I don't know if you know this software. Probably you know Max software. Basically, it's very simple. The machine learns a couple of stuff that we give the machine to learn, which is mostly, you know, banks of sounds, and the machine analyzes these banks. And after that, in real time, the machine's trying to find some connections with the people that are improvising. So the audio signal of the people who is improvising is going straight into the machine, and the machine builds some answers or some complementary stuff that's the machine hears from the improviser. Okay, so why did we do that? It's because in the music we're developing in this program, there are some limitations in the stuff that the human are able to do. And mostly as we are dealing with a music that is mostly made of timbre and no harmony, there is no harmony in this music in the classical sense, the machine helps us to manipulate some objects that are very complex objects in terms of timbre. And the machine can find some connections in the timbre that the human cannot find. So that's why we use the machine, basically. I think it's.
So we'll keep that discussion short because we want to have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
Frederick, that's great. We'll come back to you about challenges, threats, and opportunities. Tom.
Okay, thank you, Frederick and Mark, and it's a real pleasure also to be here in Barcelona. I wish I came here as much as Mark apparently does. I would be a fortunate man. In a moment, there'll be a PowerPoint behind me, and I'll just go really quickly through the slides. Let me begin by saying that I'm not a jazz musician, unlike these distinguished gentlemen that I'm with. I'm a music historian, and in my previous life, I played classical music on the viola, which seems like a long distance from jazz. Although I think the seed of jazz was laid in my career when I was a student at Indiana University in the United States, where I come from the United States, and one of my teachers was the great David Baker, the jazz pedagogue who could teach jazz to anyone. He even tried to teach it to me, and it didn't really work. But I learned a lot about jazz all those many years ago from him, and I think about him all the time when I do this work. Whoops! So my PowerPoint is coming. Right. I came to Jazz AI as a music historian because I was interested in the history of now, like what is happening now, and how are people going to write this history later. And I proposed, here we go. I proposed a project called Jazz as Social Machine, and if I have some time, maybe we can talk about what a social machine is a little bit later. Next slide, please. It's a project that I ran during the terrible pandemic. I was running this project with a colleague only on Zoom, and it was kind of sad. Brona Martin, she's now gone to the University of Birmingham. Next slide. And a bunch of really cool people from all around the world, from the United States, from Taiwan, my local concert hall, and a jazz orchestra who we'll see in a moment. So next slide, please. My work in jazz is very much informed, and I was interested to hear about IRCAM, by the work of this man, George Lewis, who is the sort of the father of interactive algorithmic music. And I want to pay tribute to George Lewis, but I also want to say that my project, unlike what we're talking about today, I'm not interested in machines that improvise with human beings in real time. That doesn't, there's a lot of that, and it's wonderful, and a lot of it comes back to work that Lewis did at IRCAM 40 years ago. Next slide, please. So if you could you just press the button, run through these? You can see there was about 5 years ago, there was a flurry of articles, jazz playing robots coming within 5 years, robots playing at a club near you, stuff like that. And this actually refers to you can stop there. This refers to a project that was sponsored by the United States Defense Department, by something about robots, and actually nothing came of it. They spent $2 million on it, and then the website got erased and disappeared. I don't know, it's all secret. I have no idea what happened, but that's when I got interested in jazz robots then, in jazz improvisers that improvise without human input at all, that use, and at the time that I was learning this stuff was all, people didn't know about it, but now we know about this because this is just ChatGPT for jazz, right? So it's just using a database to come up with probabilities. Next slide. So they use the project that I found in Taiwan that I worked with uses a database that was put together in Germany, in Weimar, called the Jazzomat. And it was a ton of work, and all they got was 500 jazz solos out of it. It took them 7 years to turn that into a database. Next slide, please. And they made it into an improvising thing. And as a future historian, I was thinking to myself, so how are we gonna look back on this? And the big insight that I think I've had is that jazz is a social machine, and it's always been a social machine because it's always been a place where people and technology come together. And it's a place where a wise engineer named Tim Berners-Lee said, a social machine is something where no one knows everything, but everyone knows something, and that's what jazz is like. Next slide, please. I also got interested then in the way that probabilities are used to run these GPT machines, and that took me to the world of cybernetics. And cybernetics was actually developed during World War II so that they could predict the location of enemy airplanes when they were moving. Right? That was the beginning of the mathematics. So the mathematics behind ChatGPT and any kind of generative AI is just the same as that. It's actually not all that exciting. Even I kind of understand it, and I'm really very bad at mathematics. And this is just a picture I made. I wanted to just go back for a second. This picture I made I gave a prompt to DALL-E, which is like a GPT for pictures, and I said, make me a picture of a stochastic World War II anti-aircraft fighter with a stochastic parrot. And the stochastic parrot, that's a figure of speech that people use in AI nowadays to talk about this thing that's a copy without an original. So it's a parrot that just speaks to us. So I'm talking really quickly because I'm from New York and I get excited. Let's go to the next thing. This is a little bit of music that I organized at my university with a professional jazz band called the Dan Molinaro Jazz Orchestra. That's Dan Molinaro, the director, my colleague. And they're playing, and now the jazz transformer from Taiwan is going to take a solo. Now, this is not like what they do. It's not listening. It took 7 hours for this thing to be created and had to be sent to us. So here comes the solo. But it's on their changes. Primitive. The rhythm section were really, really annoyed about this. That's Jasper Hoiby. He's one of Britain's leading jazz bass players. And you can see that's Julian Arguelles looking kind of angry over there in the corner. However, sometimes it's not bad. Okay. Okay, we can stop that. I think you get the point. I just want to finish up because I think I'm at the end of my 6 minutes. I want to finish up by saying that there we go again. That some things happened at that concert that I did not expect. I did expect the jazz musicians to be very angry with me for making them play against a kind of recording from the can that can't hear them. That's obvious. And they also thought that the improviser was terrible, even though the technology behind it is top-notch, and Mark will confirm that for you. Here's the sad thing. I talked to the audience afterwards, sort of random. I didn't do a survey, I probably should have, and most of them who weren't musicians thought it was just fine. Okay? And that is maybe a bridge to the next section of our session, which is if the audience thought that was just, it's easy for us to say, oh, Joe Zawinul, it doesn't know anything, right? It's easy for us to say that, but the audience was fooled, just like the audience is fooled by ChatGPT-4 that came out last night that can write you a novel, and they can pass the legal exams in the United States. So that, I think, is the essence of the problem. And the final thing I'd like to say is I'm not an engineer, I'm a historian, so I don't know what happens in the future. You know what happens in the future because you're making it. I'm afraid it's going to get better. And it will be able to, when it comes together with what you are already doing with your algorithms, which are more situational, then a generative algorithm with a situational algorithm together, I think that is the frontier, and that is going to be an interesting place for us to be. Thank you.
Tom, that's absolutely brilliant. So I'm now going to, in fact, Tom, can you stay on?
Yep.
So all of us,
Sorry.
in the spirit of trying to, the title that was given to us by the designers of this whole program, thank you. I'm going to ask Tom now to answer 3 questions. I'm going to ask him, what are the 2 biggest opportunities for AI in jazz? What are the 2 biggest challenges for AI in jazz? And what are the 2 biggest threats, which I think you almost started to touch upon there?
Yeah.
And you can take those in any order, Tom. And then I'll go to questions, and then I'll say...
Well, I mean, I'll do the opportunities. As a person who listens to jazz and loves jazz and wants to live with jazz, I like there being more jazz, right? So I think what these gentlemen are doing, the algorithmic jazz, things that we hear, the things that began with George Lewis, I love the idea that the algorithmic colleague is going to be with us on the bandstand in the future, and that will become normalized in a good way. And I love that what in particular these algorithmic jazz agents, what they do is they listen to you, and then you hear yourself, I'm told, you hear yourself differently, which I think is really very interesting. So that's definitely an advantage. Very, in a very, what's the right way to, arrogant and mercenary way, I think we in the jazz community would be well advised to jump on the incredible bandwagon, the wave of money that is coming through high tech, the tech industries into music. So the music industry is very involved in AI, mostly for discovery purposes for the streaming services. So they want to teach a machine to be able to tell the difference between a samba and a rumba, or between, God forbid, John Lewis and whatever. They want to be able to tell the difference between things, so they can deliver people more music and sell more advertisements. Which means that right now there's in academia where I work, there's a lot of money, particularly in music engineering, for this kind of work. So we should get some of that. So that's opportunity number 2. I mean, the threats are kind of obvious. Very bad music is going to be sold to the public as jazz, and that's going to make our lives even worse. Right? And the other threat, the threat of the robot taking our jobs away, well, that's... Some people are afraid. When I put that concert on, I got a letter, the concert hall sent me a letter a couple days later from a member of the public who was very upset. And she wrote to me and she said, I feel like I was forced to spend 2 hours with a robot and you didn't tell me, you didn't get my permission. And I said, it said Jazz AI on the ticket, but I guess she hadn't read the ticket. And she reacted in a very visceral way to the idea that a non-human agent was telling stories in music. So that, I think, is a really big issue. And the big issue is these data sets that are behind algorithms like that are like the 500 best jazz solos. That's what the colleagues in Germany did. They just tagged 500 great jazz solos. The $2 million that was spent by the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency in the United States for the jazz robot. Like, did Charlie Parker ever get $2 million? Yeah, Miles Davis might have in the end, right? But like no one else invested that kind of money. And so the threat is that the money and the interest is going to go past the peoples whose story this is. That's you, that's us, and that is, of course, we should say this, right? Jazz is also a particular kind of storytelling that comes from a particular place. It's about liberation, it's about resistance, and that is being bought up and turned into data that then makes these things. So I think that's something to worry about.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Really hold these thoughts so we can have a discussion. So over to Frederick. The idea was like a jam session, so we can, we warm things up and then we invite everyone to have a discussion with us. So that's the plan. So Frederick.
Maybe can you put the slides and the page number 5, please? So yes, if I'm speaking about opportunities and challenges, I want to say that and you're going to see them in just a few seconds. This is, of course, a very collaborative work that we did with IRCAM, and it was mostly, it was supported by the Department of Musical Representation, Representation Musicale at IRCAM. And oh, maybe you can put it on the full screen so we can see everything. Yeah, and it's really a long pass. I want to say that it's Jérôme Nica, a researcher at IRCAM, that does all this stuff. We end up with our project that is touring now, but there was a long pass of developing all that. So, and during this pass, I can speak about the opportunities, because during this pass, when we worked with Jérôme, who really is the guy behind all these technologies at IRCAM, one of the problem we're having is that the computers are very, very bad at understanding the way a drummer plays the music. And our music is really about drumming. And so, you know, that was one of the biggest challenge, because when we started the project, Steve and I, we really wanted the computer to be able to listen all the time to the drummer and being able to, you know, produce some polyrhythmic stuff that were really, you know, following what the drummer was doing and being in the same kind of, you know, motion. And the computer is completely unable to lock with the drummer. And maybe you can show the score of the other PDF, because I think this is, for example, the scenario of the solo that one of the solo we're playing on the letter C here on one of the pieces we're playing. And you can see that it's quite a complicated rhythmic scenario.
Can you point, Frederick,
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about? And maybe we can zoom in.
This is here, from here to here.
Okay.
Sorry, here.
And the mic.
That's the part where we improvise. This part, and of course the rhythm section is playing that, and the computer cannot get anything about what's going on. And so, so now we are working at IRCAM because of our projects, and that's what I was speaking about, opportunities, that the more you work, and now they are going to really dig into these rhythmic problems. Hopefully in 2 or 3 years, they'll have a new version that will be able to hook to the computer, to the drummer. Because for us, I mean, for Steve and I, it's really one of the biggest goals, you know. Otherwise, we're sometimes stuck to do open stuff, you know, like cadenzas or stuff like that, which is not really satisfying, because our music is really about drumming, I guess. This is something that is, you know, at the center of the music, and that's why Thelonious Monk always said, listen to the drummer, because he's the real, you know, chief of the orchestra. About the threats, I'm not, you know, I'm quite confident, because I think there will be very bad music in the future, but there have been very bad music in the past also. So, you know, it's not about computer, it's about I mean, these are tools, and, you know, all the major companies, you know, they didn't wait for the tools from AI to produce very bad music and very poor music and sell it all over the world. So yes, there will be very bad music, but I don't think it will change really anything, because we're really out of the scope for these people, I guess, what we're doing. So it's something very different from, you know, I really strongly believe that there is 2 parts in music. You have people that are selling stuff and that want to make money out of this stuff. And of course, they will use the tools they have to try to sell it even more. And you will always have people that will, you know, do music and just create new music. And that's, I think it will continue on. But probably, yeah, we will have very bad jazz in the future because of these technologies. But you know, with these technologies, we will be also able to make great stuff. So that's you know, that's the way the world goes, I guess.
That's fantastic, Frederick, and absolutely brilliant answers like Tom's. If someone could just hold the mic, can someone just give me time 6 minutes? I don't want to go over the 6 minutes, because I can't do it if I'm playing the piano. Yeah. Can someone do 6 minutes? And then I will stop talking, I promise. You're
Okay.
gonna hold this
one.
Okay.
This one. Oh, no, you can leave this there. Let's use this one.
Okay, so what was the first question? I wrote wrote my answers down here. So here I am improvising. Let me just turn it up a little bit so you can hear it. Take this away, take that away. And there are, of course, many different ways to improvise. One is you have a chord sequence. Another one is completely free. It's very hard to manufacture it. Another one is a little bit more fluid, kind of like chordal, looking at modes. So, what are the opportunities? Okay, so I'm now going to switch on this. Shh, relax. One of the things it's right. Okay, you can't see what's on there, but basically, here is what I think is one. It's pretty much what we've heard from both of our others. It's as a musician, I want to be able to improvise and compose in different ways. So, with a human, if I'm improvising with a human, I get trust. I know them. I've booked them. I've worked with them. I know they're a human being. I know they want to work again. If I'm playing with an improvisation, so what I think doesn't stop very easily. It's actually like a free jazz gig. If you've ever done them, you know, you think after about 20 minutes you're coming to nothing, and then the drummer starts going, and then you have to start playing again, and you're exhausted. So finishing in free jazz actually is a really interesting problem as a performer, for sure, and that's my experience. Great fun and great fun for the player, maybe not the audience sometimes. So the first one is I like the challenge. I kind of like the challenge of exploring, can I cope with playing with a musical Markov model version of me? The second opportunity is exactly, again, what we've heard is knowing myself better. The problem with improvisation and composition, for me and for many others, is you end up playing similar patterns. So if I see a particular chord sequence, now, there's so much knowledge in my fingers and playing, I kind of want to break free. You know, there are some extraordinary musicians, John Coltrane, Keith Jarrett, who always somehow manage to get outside themselves and play. So there's something about the AI knowing me. I'm hearing myself, or at least a model, a Markov model of myself, and that can maybe trigger me to stop playing in certain ways, to not repeat myself, either as a performer or a composer. So I'm interested in AI othering me and me understanding myself from a distance. When I was learning the piano teacher made me put headphones on. So when I played, I didn't get seduced by it being me. I heard it from a distance. It's nice. What do I think the challenge? The big challenge for AI is, how do I get more than I put in? I'm not going to bore you with too much playing, but it's only mimicking what we do. So how do we design something that gives us more than we get, other than what I've just spoken about there? Here is, I think, the hardest problem. Which is why actually having two panelists where this is true, is to build an AI system that people want to use. So one of the reasons that I'm proud of the concert Bark to the Future here in Barcelona last year is a fantastic musician, Xavier Carles Morega, is that his name? Amerigo, gracias. A fantastic, heard the software and decided to go and use it himself. He trained it, he played Bach, he improvised the system, he built models, and he used those models to do a performance. Wow, that's so rare. So this idea of a sustained relationship with an AI is, I think, the hardest design challenge. My biggest worry is it's really interesting. I'm very heartened to hear that Frederick thinks there's always been bad music. That's right. I think I made much of that music myself when I was a punk musician. But of course there is a worry. Do I have 1 minute left?
30 seconds.
Okay. Maybe I'll show it at the end when we're leaving. But there's 3 concerts. The one thing philosophically that we need to understand, and the person who really said this was John Dewey. We talk about our heroes. John Dewey is mine. He was an American pragmatist philosopher, and he wrote a really key book, Art, in 1932, can't remember, Art as Experience. Let us never think that the creative human expression is ever anything more or less than what it is to be a human being. The act of improvising and the act of listening is itself an improvisation. So we do not want to dumb down music. So there is a little worry that because of these big corporate organizations and because of the desire not to have copyright, that music will be manufactured where the performer does not make money. And of course, we know the other big threat is just the copyright rules. You know, who knows when ChatGPT comes up with a tune, whether something I've written is in that corpus. We don't know. And so this appropriation of artistic and creative content by huge machines we don't understand is a threat. Right, that is definitely it. I'm going to come and sit here with my 2 colleagues. And the idea is you'd say what you think. This is like thinking like a jam session. We're now all going to collectively improvise. But please take the microphone and just say your name or say something about yourself. So, over to you. And if not, we'll just chat. But let's hear your thoughts. What do you think are the challenges, opportunities, and threats? What do you have experience of listening or playing? I thought it'd be okay. We've got a question at the back. But, thank you. It's always the hardest to ask the first. And remember the prize. Copy was so fancy for the best question.
Hi, Mark. How you doing? I'm Hugh. I'm running a record label, jazz label in Amsterdam. So not really in the field, but just interested. And I was wondering about your insights on the receiving end of the technology. We've been talking a lot about the AI and the systems and the models, but there's also receiving end of that technology being the audience listening to the music. So the one lady sending emails that she didn't like being the robot. And I feel the threat when you're saying like the AI developed music for within jazz, for the playlist and the coffee table jazz and the background jazz. For that, I think that threat is a real thing. But looking at jazz audience, that's, I think by definition, the audience is looking for this human connection and the connection with the instrumentalists and searching for some artistic depth in the music they're viewing. So I think I'm just wondering about your insights on the development of these models and these systems and technology. I'm assuming there's also going to be like a development on the receiving end of that, of people listening to the music and sort of an anti-reaction to that. Is that?
I'm going to ask Frederick to go first, but I just want to say, let me just summarize the question. It's like, how do we model or understand what it is to be a listener with the development of AI and technology? Is that a fair summary of your question?
Yeah, I just running your insights on the receiving end and technology. Yeah.
Frederick, you have to go first. It's a big question.
It's a difficult topic, but you know, for me it's the same question. You know, I'm not sure what the audience gets of what we do every time, but I'm pretty sure that there are some stuff that are working on a very basic human level when you listen to music, and you want to see human people playing music. And for us, the approach that we have on using the so-called AI, because in a certain way, I'm not sure that it's so intelligent that everybody says, but yeah, because we get the same issues about how it stops. It's an issue for everybody. But for us, it's really a tool. And Jérôme Nika, who developed the technology, is also, because we call these stuff agents, but he's also speaking about instruments. And for him, when we work on an agent and we train it, for him it's like tuning an instrument. And this instrument and all the work we do cannot, I mean, at least in the stuff we're working on, cannot exist without any kind of human being and any interaction and real musicians that are playing with it. So I think, you know, for the audience, you don't have to make too much about the fact that you're playing with computer. They just have to listen to the music. And if they like the result, it's cool. And if they don't like it, it's bad. But we go back to what you said, Tom, is that sometimes, you know, bad stuff that is played by a computer in jazz would end up like being something cool for some part of the audience, which is a problem. But I think that, you know, the concert is so important in jazz. The concert is really the key of the music. And you could say that we have the same kind of problem with the fact that I'm pretty sure that 90% of the people who listen to jazz music, they're only listening to recordings, historic recordings, and then don't really connect with concerts. And that's a bit the same question for me, you know, because this is a concert music, really. This music is all about the concert. And you know, what we just heard that I showed, we just played in Germany 1 month ago with this program, and the music was completely different. And every time we play, it's different. And even though we have this AI stuff, I mean, it doesn't change anything for me. Of course, if you only have a computer on stage, this is a problem. But as long as you have musicians that, you know, use these as tools, I think it's okay.
Thanks. Well, I don't want to sound too much like a professor, right? But there's a real problem with taste. Taste, we touch taste at our peril. Taste is very dangerous. So I'm just remembering what you were talking about bad music. It's a great reminder, Frederick, thank you, about the history of bad music in jazz also. And but of course, what do you mean bad? And I remember being taught, again, I'll tell a David Baker story. So we took improvisation from him. He taught all the classical musicians how to improvise, and that sort of was like learning to be bad jazz musicians. I'll tell you about that some other time. It was really bad, especially what I did was really bad. But then there was a like listening to jazz seminar with him, which was amazing. And he just took us through all the music he knew. And this is a guy who'd been Bill Evans's roommate in New York, and he played with George Russell in the George Russell sextet on that album Aesthetics in 1957. So that's like a high point of intellectual New York jazz. And there's David Baker. But then he would play stuff for us, and there would be snickering. They'd be like, hey. This was 30 years ago, right? It'd be like Jimmy Smith and the Hammond organ, or do you remember Dickie Wells and his talking trombone? The guy from, I think he played with Ellington, but he had a kind of novelty act. And I learned from all these, you know, to be like, oh, well, you know. And so now this will come. I think what these guys were playing for you is really exciting frontier interactions, putting your humanity on the stage, trying to figure out what it is. And a little bit of I'm more concerned about the purely generative jazz in the audience, right? So the kind that I dug out from those great engineers in Taiwan, that's got no interaction in it. That's just coming from the can. That's coming out of the history of jazz, chopped up like a jazz salad and then served cold. All salads are cold. An element of a jazz nature, about freedom, about improvisation. And well, maybe it's not a danger, that's exciting, right? Because then we are completely in what academics call the post-human, right? We're completely divorced from human agency. And I don't know how that's going to work in the jazz club. I really don't. Will we go buy a ticket to hear someone who's not of someone? Maybe. Can't tell you. Check in 5 years.
I think it's a really important question what you've asked, and I think it is often overlooked in the history of AI researchers trying to show how brilliant they are as AI researchers. It was a problem with laptop musicians. Do you remember? And it's a similar problem. People would sit brilliantly, and this is a purely human activity, no AI, just programming. There is something about the experience of connecting with the human act of performing, which is a critical part of being an audience and relating to an audience. And unless we see the challenge, so one of the reasons I think playing with an AI for 5 or 10 minutes is interesting is you see on my face, I'm out of my comfort zone, and it's a challenge to make it musical. I don't think it's more interesting after 5 minutes, I think, maybe 3 minutes, it's not so interesting. But I think it's absolutely the right question. So the question then becomes, how do we use technology and AI to make us more sophisticated, engaged, embodied listeners to music? Something that some researchers I know in Milan are really looking at this problem. It's a great question. Do you want to say your thoughts on it before we move on to another question? Can we have the microphone back, please, colleagues? Thank you. And then
Well, I was just wondering, so thanks for your answers. I think it's right about the generative music. Is that the term? Like that? And that's what I mentioned. Of course, I'm in the recording business, not in the live business. So that's the field we're in. So that's the one we're competing with, so to say.
Someone's going to try and sell that to you soon.
They already have. So that's what I was wondering about. And what we've seen is that works for the background jazz because people don't mind. They've got it like in the back when they're in the coffee shop, and then they don't really care. Like the solo you just showed us, that will do if you're just having it in the background and you have no knowledge of jazz. But then the jazz in that context isn't the goal itself. It's like the means to, I don't know, relaxing or studying or focusing or whatever. And I just maybe it's hoping, but I'm thinking that the audience in jazz is, like we're underestimating the audience we have, that they're really actively searching for that connection, searching for new music, new tunes, new sounds, stuff like that. So they won't take the copy of no original as decent jazz.
did you buy the generative music?
Sorry?
Did you buy the generative system?
No, we didn't.
We have another question here.
Hi. So I have a question because we've talked about jazz in live music, and now we're talking about music like jazz and recordings. But there's one other income stream, of course, for a lot of musicians, which is sync and sync licensing. Do you think that eventually AI is going to take over music that is now being composed for sync? Or will musicians still be able to generate income based on, instrumental compositions for film and advertising and stuff like that? Because on the one hand, I think that a lot of people are kind of freaking out about this new technology. On the other, when we invented the Xerox machine, people thought we were stealing sheet music. So this has been an issue for hundreds of years. Yeah, exactly. And then, obviously, online music consumption and streaming and all of that. So this is an ongoing conversation. But is this, do you think this is the end of, or the beginning of the end for human-composed music?
So great question. Are we going to come back to you for what you think afterwards? Okay.
So yeah, I was talking to someone about this the other day. I have a PhD student in Southampton who's working together with me and a sociologist on the question of work futures in music and how, not just jazz, how they're going to be impacted by this. And yeah, the Xerox machine, 20 years ago, everybody was freaking out about sample libraries. Mm-hmm. Now they're here, they're part of the workflow. People still seem to be working. Whether they're working as well as they did is another question. So I often think that particular, the robots are coming and taking our jobs is quite hyped.
Yeah, me too.
But I wouldn't say that we should be complacent about it, or that we shouldn't defend the rights of human beings to learn and make this music. And no one should come to us and say, you don't need to teach this anymore because I've got a machine that can make the sing music. That's what I would say. So complacency is bad, but I think we can look at this in a more relaxed way than some would suggest. I don't know if you want to.
Yes, I think once again, it really depends on, music has different functions. And of course, I think that the music that has, for sync, for example, that people are using, it's a different function than the music that you play in concert, and people are not looking for the same stuff most of the time. So the biggest issue is the fact that there won't be any more copyright for this stuff, because of course producers, what they will decide is to make it with an AI if they want to, have a very low music in background, because there is no copyright to pay. You don't have any kind, of fees to pay or nothing.
We need a new kind of copyright.
Yeah.
We need a social machine copyright. I'm just a poor music historian. I'm not a lawyer, but I think that this is a typical problem that happens with technology. And this is why those of you who might be in like educational institutions, why you should never ever let the engineers alone with this stuff, because they don't think about that. The answer to that question requires lawyers, it requires music people and engineers all working together. And I'm not really sure the people who make the laws are paying attention to this in the least. So that's another issue. Politicians are required.
Yeah, and even in our field, you know, the thing that is generated by the machine that we're using, sometime in the composed part, sometime in the improvised part, who does it belongs to? I mean, right now there is absolutely no answer to that question. So, you know, and about the, yes, I think, once again, about the difference in the music also, I'm very confident in the fact that when you're speaking about people that are writing music and dedicating their life to writing music, when you write a 45 minutes piece for a large ensemble, I mean, this is not about just a simple recipe that an AI can reproduce now. Maybe in 5, 10, 20 years, some people would be able to do it, but right now, I think we're very, very far from that, you know, because writing music on a serious level, this is not just about writing a bit of melody and, you know, putting some chord changes under it. It's something else.
I can't add, only to say that we need to work more closely with lawyers,
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree.
Ethics and law is a critical part of being an AI researcher now, and you have to take that responsibility. But I'm minded of a talk I saw in London, and they looked at the various issues legally about, George Harrison, Sweet Lord, and there's been a number of high-profile cases. It's incredibly hard to work out whether a human consciously copied another human. So we do need the law to catch up in order to understand. So the answer is I hope not, but we need to move more quickly than we're moving. What do you think?
No, I mean, I'm a publicist and marketing director, so this whole thing is like an interest of mine, but other than that, completely out of my wheelhouse. But I did go to law school, and I do agree that, it's important to develop some sort of legal base worldwide, I would say, and to set a precedent for the protection of our intellectual property, even though, it's generated a little bit differently. So I think that would be the first step. As you said, complacency is not an option. But other than that, also, people have been freaking out about technology for a long time, and relevance is sort of my core business. So it's what was cool today is, boring tomorrow. So I'm not really, I think that, as long as you sort of keep in touch with the reality of technology, you should be fine, I think. Do I get this? Thank you.
Hello. I am J.B. Cardona, and I broadcast a radio program about jazz in Tarragona Radio, Paraula de Jazz. And I've been listening this music that we call jazz for decades, live music and recorded music. And my question would be, do you think that this noise or this sound that can be produced by the IA could be useful to increase the audiences, live music, jazz and recorded music live on music?
Can I just make sure I understand the question is, can AI be used to bring more audiences back into listening to jazz? Is that how you understood the question? Right, Frederick, do you mind? Do you have any ideas? I mean, it's a very good question.
Thank you.
I wish I knew the answer.
I don't know, because because
it's been a good question.
In the music we're doing, the music we're doing, for example, this program we're doing with Steve. No, I'm sorry to say that, the music is, there is really a fracture, I guess, now in what's played on the radio, what's played. I'm not speaking about, very specialized radio. I'm speaking general radios and on the TV and on the media, and even what you can find on the main channels on the internet. There is a really fracture between the music, people that are creating new music, and what is proposed to most of the people. So I think that this fracture is far bigger than the problem of, using for us some tools to try to bring back some people. I think what we need as musicians is more of the stuff we are doing in large venues, in public radios, in public TVs, and, when you have public money into TV or radio, they should, you know, play the music, the new creative music, and they shouldn't play, you know, all the stuff that they're disguising as so-called creative music, but it's just, you know, the same old songs that you can hear for 50 years, and they'll try to selling the same stuff all over the planet. So I think the fracture is here for me. And I'm not sure that in the field, I mean, you've been hearing what we're doing. I'm not sure that it will bring a lot of people, the AI, on stage. I think people, most of the people, I mean, here you all, you know, you're into the jazz community, so you know about jazz, but most of the people, they don't know nothing about the stuff we're doing. And for them, what is jazz? It's the music that was played 50 or 60 years ago. The thing that is played now in New York City or other cities is absolutely not what they're thinking about when they're thinking about jazz. So the fracture is huge, and I don't think that it will help in any way. I'm sorry I'm pessimistic, but you know, I think it's real life.
You've been very optimistic up till now.
Yeah, it's you know, it's the real life we're into as musicians. So
I also don't know. Great question. I want to know what you think. But there have been some sellout concerts where people have used technology, not jazz so much, but improvised music. We saw a concert at Xavier a couple of years ago with an AI system and a fantastic jazz piano player. But I left the concert wanting just to hear the jazz piano player, not the relationship with the AI, but the Back to the Future. So I think there's something, because people are curious about AI, and maybe it will help us to work out what it is to be human through the limitations of AI. But I don't know. Tom,
So very, very quickly, I think that you're right, Frederick, that for the jazz world we live in right now, it's not going to make much of a difference. I would disagree, though, that the kind of generative AI that I looked into that just makes it up by itself, that's not trying to play with great musicians, uses exactly the same technology as self-driving cars, as the camera at the border that finds out if you're a bad person or a good person, as what your bank decides to give you a credit card or not. It's exactly the same. So this is a problem that everybody has, and the one thing that it's not very good at yet is generating jazz. So that's come in, listen to, you know, if any of you work for the media, yeah, that's a way to talk about GPT technology that's happening right now, and say, why is it that jazz, it seems to be a harder nut, you know, a harder problem to solve, a harder nut to crack.
very nice. After all these years of listening to jazz, what do you think?
Sorry?
You talked about you have been a listener for many decades. What is your opinion?
Well, my opinion is that, well, my personal opinion, I enjoy very much the live music, acoustic music. I don't deal in a good way with artificial sounds. So I think there are many, it's very complicated to compose, under my opinion, new productions of high quality, because there is so much beautiful, great music composed that it's not easy. And I prefer to listen to good music that it's just been made, than new experiences just in a moderate dose. Thank you very much.
We have two more questions, yeah.
Hi.
Someone needs to tell me how long we can go. Okay, keep talking.
Hi, this is Selin from Turkey/Spain. So my question is going to be more romantic, because I want to ask the feeling that the AI will create in me, right? When I listen to something that this artificial intelligence creates, what will I get from it? Because for me, music is sound and the vibrations that it's creating, and my taste is totally focused on this vibration that's giving me goosebumps. So if it's goosebumps, I like the music. And I would really love to do an experiment, like a social experiment, AI composed music played by AI and played by musicians, and like try to get the conclusion out of it, right?
So it's an incredibly hard question, and again, I will ask you. There is a lot of psychological evidence that suggests we don't want to be tuned in or emotionally
moved by technology and AI music. I've done some experiments in the UK, and I played at the Vortex Jazz Club. The photo in that is me at the Vortex playing music, and I think either by Francois Pachet when he was at Sony, or someone else, or Geraint Wiggins, he was at Goldsmiths. And actually, you give me any notes, any good piano player, any good guitarist, you give some notes. I made a mistake, but it ain't what you play, it's the way that you play it. So I think it's actually quite easy to take a composition from a robot, an AI, and play it nicely. But so what? I'd rather play a composition by a human. I'm not answering your question, but do you think it's even possible, would be my question when I've spoken to the panelists, could you be moved by an AI? I come back to you later.
Yeah. So I'm reminded of when I put on that concert with the jazz robot. The first thing we did, we had a lot of trouble deciding how to refer to them, and also their gender, which in English is always a problem. So we decided to call it a they, because we couldn't calling it him, he seemed wrong for all the reasons. And we had to decide. By the way, I should plug that wonderful big band who played with made an album of those tunes without the AI. Thank goodness. That's just released this week. So Dan Mar Molinero Jazz Orchestra, go look for it. It's a really interesting album. We talked about exactly that problem. How are we going to invoice them, the AI? And we chose this like like robot thing just to make sure that everybody knew, because that seemed like would have been unethical to hide it under something pretty, and we would have been able to do that, to make it sound quite, and that would have the woman who wrote the letter, we would have maybe gotten more letters, but by hiding it. So we let it be very, very obvious. So I think that there's a lot of work that could be done with generated music that's generated, copies without originals, generated and then made to sound really nice. That piece of work could be very interesting.
It's also a very difficult question. Probably I would answer that is that if I look at what Mark is doing and what we're doing, the input, what we're giving to the music, to the computer, the answer we get comes from what we teach to the computer. So I think that it really depends on, the human factor is still there, because the way you're using the technology, you have to give some stuff to the computer, and they should listen and learn some stuff, and everything depends on what you give the computer to listen to it, to learn from. So in a certain way, I think the computer's touch is still there, and in what we're doing, it's really about mixing some texture that comes from computer. But I think at the end of the concerts, most of the people in the audience, they don't know what was coming from the orchestra and what was coming from the computer, which I found great, because the point is not about, oh look, we have a fancy stuff on the computer and it's going to do some fancy stuff. The thing is that the music just has to be great music, and at the end, when you don't exactly know what the computer was doing, but still there it was, sometimes it was in the orchestration of some stuff, sometimes it was improvising with some people, but it really depends on the way you work on it, you see? So and I think that's something very common with the technology you're using, no? If I'm not wrong, yeah. So we are still far from something that is completely artificial, machines that are building stuff on their own. I think machine, they have to learn, and you were speaking about the fact that they are feeding these machines with 500 great solos and try to make like a mock-up of the great solos. And you're just feeding the machine with stuff. And you probably get something that resembles more or less these solos because you're feeding them with these solos. But the machine on itself, they don't know what to do. It's just machines. You have to push buttons if you want them to do something.
You have to push buttons to get them to do something. A lovely way to end that. But what do you think?
Wow, I'm super excited to find out what's going to happen in time, because right now I'm experiencing ChatGPT on texts, and like I'm giving some comments like, think like, let's play a game and think like Einstein. No, you have the brains of Einstein, and you're going to answer some of my questions, and I give some questions, and it answers me in a way that it moves me, the text. But like when it comes to music, if we can give the right data, as you said, for example, act like a sound healer or create these vibrations this musician was creating in that piece, or add this texture or add this atmosphere. So I think it can go to a way, but at the end, the data, who's giving the data? So if we still, as humans, will be giving the data to the AI, okay, but then if we move to a way that it gives itself to the data, you know? For example, I'm a producer, I'm a composer, and I tell it like, okay, take my 10 songs and then take the data of my textures, of my creations, of my melodic structures, my progressions, and now add this and this and this and create this. The answer, if it plays, will it move me? Because it's going to be, again, my creation, no? Because I'm giving the ideas. So I'm curious. I'm super curious to know what's going to happen and experience, and let's see what's going to happen. I'm going to do a lot of experiments for sure.
Can I just say something for 10 seconds? So what if we could, I think it'll be possible to tell the machine, like you asked it to be Einstein, we can say, could you please do another 700 hours of Bill Evans live at the Village Vanguard 1963. Yeah, just keep going. And it'll be able to do that in a few years, and it'll sound just like, you'll hear the noise of the coffee cups and and Scott LaFaru playing the bass and going to get killed in a car accident that night, and we'll just hear it, and we'll say, could you do 700 hours of that? And it'll do it, no problem.
But will I get goosebumps?
Unlikely.
You say.
Right. Okay, we got one question here. We had one question. Okay, well, Xavier, I'm going to hear all the questions. What, 3 questions? Let's hear them all together. And the panelists, I promised 5 more minutes only. So can we hear all the questions?
Yeah, it's not a question, but a comment to the last 2 questions. I had the great opportunity and pleasure to have his project in my venue months ago, or a few weeks ago. And for the question, if it attracts audience to tell about, we are using AI, and that does not help at all. It was really hard to sell the concert. I think, I don't know exactly why, but it was not so easy to sell it, but it was extremely moving, and that's to be part of this project and concert, and it was really a great experience. And after that, I think the audience will check out if we have something similar like that, because he said that was really, really cool. So.
Were you courageous in programming this, do you think? Did you have to take a leap of faith?
It does not need too much courage, because I just liked what I heard before, and that's how I do my booking. So I just book what I like and try to get the audience.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that comment. Xavier, sorry, just behind you, there's a question, and then Xavier. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My question is, what do you think that are the musical inputs that this technology can bring to the improvisational or jazz language in the future? It's going to help to expand rhythmically, harmonically. We're going to get what is the output, thinking that at the end we will be somehow imitating our environment, and this is going to be part of the musical ambience in the future.
Okay, so you heard the question. I'm not going to, Xavier, I would like Frederick, I'd like you to answer that question. Xavier, maybe ask another question, and then we'll finish. Can you ask that question, and then perhaps I'll be right now?
Thank you, gentlemen, for your insights and ideas. I have to say that there is something floating on in the atmosphere about if the music that an AI produces can move you. I can say yes, because I still can remember when in November 2021, the first time that Carles Marigó, a classical pianist with one leg in the jazz and the other in the classical music, appears in your flat and had the first dialogue with the same keyboard and the AI. And after two hours of working with the tool, he says, yes, it's possible. And he spent 8 months training the AI from the Goldsmiths to play like Johann Sebastian Bach. And 8 months before, he played in the Fundación Miró, Festival Grec de Barcelona, with a show that was Back to the Future. And my answer is yes. It was moving. In the stage was Carles Marigó with a lady playing the violin and the AI from Goldsmiths. And sometimes he was following the tool. Sometimes the tool was following him. And the music they played together, like 3 musicians at the same time in real time, was something moving. Yeah, I have to say that yes. But he spent 8 months training. I suppose that today we have here a lot of musicians. If you are afraid of the tool, in 1 month time here in Barcelona, you will have the chance you will have the opportunity to experiment the feeling to play your keyboard with an AI. I belong to Artificia, a platform to promote the use of AI applied to the arts. And the next 26 and 27 of April, in the CCCB in Barcelona, we will have 2 sessions. The first day more theoretical, to talk about the future of the AI applied to music. And the second day, we invite you all to take part of this workshop, 5 hours with your keyboard, establishing a dialogue with an AI. So you are welcome to be part of that. Yeah, and thanks again. I think that you mentioned things very important. That another question is what mentioned that gentleman over there. If the use of this technology can reach new audiences. I have to say also again, yes. I think it's something that we have to taste it. We have to put it. We have to give the chance to the new audiences to approach jazz, and maybe we have an opportunity to do that. Yes. Sorry, I don't want to monopolize
we need to
dialogue.
finish it here. Okay, so it's great to hear Xavier, producer, and the promoter saying that actually there was an exciting concert. So your question, even though we're not going to answer it, you get the copy of Song Bouncy for the best question because we cannot answer it. Yeah. So I want to look forward. Can I really thank the panel? I thought that was brilliant. Frederick, really a pleasure to hear about your work and hear your music. Tom, pleasure as always. Thank you, and I thought it was fantastic to have your different perspectives. Thank you for listening to us and taking part in it. See you soon.
Thank you very much. We see you here in 1 hour, 3 o'clock for the opening ceremony and for the concert of Miranda Fernandez. And then we go just to Jamboree and Jamboree Dress. Okay? Bye-bye.